Welcome, everyone. It's Lisa Norell. You are in episode 77 of the Mindful Marketer live stream. We are here in Virginia, running live today. Got a lot to cover. It's Friday, and let us know where you are today by putting your name or your location in the chat. We'll be taking some great questions from you today because this is about how marketing can be an ally for the truth. This is our final show before we head to Nashville, Tennessee on November 2nd for the CMO's Leading Innovation Conference. We'll be welcoming leaders, growth leaders, CMOs, CEOs, COOs from top organizations, including AARP, Alliance Bernstein, Schneider Electric, Opry Entertainment, CoStar, and more. We're pretty much full right now, but we have room for a couple of more people. If you're interested, drop me a note. It's going to be an amazing day and a half cohort hosted at Belmont University. Now, let's talk about the show today. Oh my gosh, the truth will set you free unless you don't know where to find it. The search for the truth is so important, especially in fulfilling our mission at the Energized Growth Organization and here on the show, which is to help mindful market leaders cultivate healthier companies. You really can't do that if you don't have the truth and you're not dealing with it. So today we're going to explore how do market leaders actually find and become allies for the truth. Right now, you already know across every institution, facts are under attack. Some media and tech leaders are promoting polarization and Section 230, AI hallucination, and unfair advertising. Fuel and stoke the fires. In fact, I was getting ready for the live stream and I found out that a judge had just dismissed a class action lawsuit against two major organizations, McDonald's and Wendy's. People had gathered together to accuse them of lying about the size of their beef patties. So if you're a marketer, you need to stay ahead of these things. You can't let them happen to you. So our goal is to help you unpack this and be champions for the truth, as I've mentioned earlier. Before I welcome Eric to the stage, I'm reminded of something I've learned from our mutual friend, co-founder of the Modern Elder Academy, Chip Conley, who says, quote, "Knowledge results in the understanding of a particular subject, whereas wisdom develops the discernment and reasoning ability in a person across all domains. A knowledge worker tends to use an analytical mind, but a wisdom worker likely thinks holistically and systemically. We use more creativity and emotional intelligence." So I think about wisdom keepers like Eric Schoenberg, and I get excited about introducing them to you. He is a former CEO of Mansueto Ventures, which was a holding company for Inc., and is now very active in formulating an important movement called the Alliance for Trust in Media. So welcome our truth teller and wisdom keeper, Eric Schoenberg, to the stage.
Thank you, Lisa. Nice to be here.
It's great to see you here today, a fellow pilot. Now, I'm going to ask you a wacky question and also welcome people. We've got Marie Madeleine from Florida and a number of other people joining us. Tell us your origin story of when you started to commit your life work to advocating truth telling.
There were two kind of road to Damascus epiphanies. One happened when I was coming off the stage of a panel in which I had appeared with one of my journalistic idols, David Brooks, the columnist for the New York Times and the Atlantic, among other things. And, I thought I had held up pretty well against David Brooks's giant brain. But when I came off stage, a woman came up to me and she said, "Can I ask you a question?" And, I thought she would say something about how clever or articulate or whatever I was. And instead, she said, "Why do you journalists always lie?" And that was like a splash of cold water in never occurred to me and never met a journalist who intentionally told untruth. So that was an indication that there was something afoot in the information environment that was not what I thought it was from inside the world of Inc. and Fast Company. And then the final blow that made me realize that the information environment, the state of disinformation was the challenge of our generation was January 6th. At that point, I realized that this was not a joke, that this information environment that motivated people who could have been my neighbors to storm the Capitol, the symbol of government of the country that they claimed to love, was that that meant things had gotten totally out of hand. And by comparison, the work of uh, running another year of a couple publications seemed to pale in comparison. I wanted to be part of the solution to what seemed to me to be a five-alarm fire in our information environment.
Well, yes, and it's a storm, right? A perfect storm. We have political polarization. We have generative AI, which boasts hallucination, and it doesn't seem to be getting much better yet. And then we have these rogue election interlopers that manipulate big communication platforms and media platforms like Meta. Um, are there other? So I'm a CMO. I've got a content budget. I've got a brand I need to protect. Where else should I look for these nefarious violators of the truth so I can get ahead of them?
Well, the biggest spreaders of misinformation are not the sources that you mentioned necessarily. Sure, there are certainly bad actors who are using the democratization of media through social media, so forth, and the ease of setting up lookalike news sites that are not really anything other than propaganda outlets. But they are relatively minor. What is kind of the killer point in the manipulation cycle of news media is when the misinformation escapes those places of origin and starts to spread through the ecosystem. The way a lie or falsehood or exaggeration generally starts is in some minor corner of the internet or a small local news site. And then it ricochets around either with unwitting supporters or allies of the falsehood or bots. And eventually it gets picked up by someone in the elite media who has a much bigger following. And then it starts to become part of the conversation. But that's how media manipulation generally happens. Marketers can play a key role in there by interrupting the cycle, by understanding what are reliable sources of information, the news sites that follow best practices, reliable sources on social media, and staying away from things that seem dubious.
And you've got a long career with money and with Mansueto Ventures, with Inc. And you also hosted a lot of major conferences where sponsorship dollars and advertising dollars really fueled your growth. Did you ever feel, was there ever a moment where you were kind of on the line between, accepting I don't know how to say this in a diplomatic way, but kind of caught yourself on that thin line between truth twisters and the truth makers, um, and you had to make a tough call?
At Inc. and Fast Company, that kind of conflict rarely came up. Although at Money, there was an interesting bit of pressure applied to me around a column called The Mole. The Mole was a columnist who had been a financial planner, actually was still an active financial planner, who revealed the secrets of that profession and how they manipulated their customers to squeeze a little bit of extra money or give them not exactly the best advice. And financial planning institutions were a big supporter of Money Magazine. And so there was a lot of pressure from the advertising side to get rid of that column. But in the culture of Time Inc., which ran Money Magazine at the time, that was overstepping by the advertising department. And I was supported by leadership of the company in keeping this column, which is very useful to the readers, still going. I think that's the closest where the advertising dollars and editorial integrity were really at loggerheads like that.
And the other thing that I'm trying to discern is when I'm on LinkedIn, I'm noticing there are a lot of people entering the consulting business. They leave a corporate America or corporate job, and they go into consulting or they work for an analyst firm. And what I'm finding is a lot of them are also getting into the awards business or the recognition business. And I'm actually asking you for some advice here, Eric, because a few of the analyst firms that are popping up will post on LinkedIn, here are the top 10 AI companies that we love. And they don't give us the next piece of that story, which is either they happen to also be clients of ours, or they're paying us a sponsorship fee for our podcast. Like, they don't go the extra mile. And I'm finding that it's very fuzzy with some of them. I'm not getting a straight answer. Are they advertising? Are they sponsors? Or are you completely an independent analyst firm? What can CMOs do when they're presented with those kinds of scenarios or posts?
Well, a CMO or any reader, I think, needs to be aware of the reliability of the organization that's doing the ranking, what the criteria are for the ranking, how rigorous is it, and what the incentives may be to put somebody on the list. The company that does the ranking, the outlet that does the ranking, should be able to explain why a listing was awarded. At Inc., for example, our most prominent ranking was the Inc. 5000. And there it was quite easy to figure out how it worked because it was strictly based on revenue growth over the previous 3 years. It was a number that we verified with their tax return or with a signed statement from their accountant. And then we went through a process to make sure that they were not, for example, combining wholly owned companies to make one, particularly enormous growth projection. And then we felt confident going forward with our list at Fortune. The Fortune 500, as was something I'm sure everyone has heard of. That's based entirely on market cap. I'm sorry, that's revenue, total revenues. And that is, something that is public knowledge, and it's easy to figure out. If you can't figure out what the award is being given for, that is definitely a red flag. If the organization seems to be conflicted about what companies are being chosen and they can't really explain why, those would be signs that you might give that ranking a pretty wide berth.
Right. Well, thanks for clarifying that. I've run into it. And I've also listened to a few podcasts now that, there are only 4 million of them, but I've listened to a couple of podcasts where the podcast hosts are also analyst firms or event companies or something. And they're like praising certain technology firms. And I followed up with the founder later and I said, are they also, and then they'll say, oh, and they're also sponsors for our upcoming XYZ conference. And I just don't, I like to see things kept very clear on the front end and say, hey, everybody, full disclosure, they're sponsoring our luncheon next week and they have a great product. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's right. In the the financial world would call that talking your book. Bragging about a company and saying that it's especially profitable or promising or something like that, and not disclosing that you've invested in it.
Yes. And we're noticing that they made that change on CNBC, where they actually asked the analyst, are you an investor in this noted company? And thank goodness they do that.
Yes. That is, CNBC is a place that follows a lot of top level journalistic practices.
Definitely. And we have a question, by the way, Eric, from Pete Erickson in Arlington, Virginia, joining us. So, hi, Pete, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Eric. Thank you so much. I was just putting the question actually into the LinkedIn Live, so I'm just going to hit enter there. So you'll see it. The group will see it pop up. My question is really, Eric, around, we're talking about manipulation with information and disinformation, and January 6th obviously was massive. I like to switch the conversation a little bit to advertising, and I think it's really related. We're, as advertisers, we've been used to, and I run conferences. So I do a lot of digital marketing, a lot of digital advertising. We really try to find our personas out there. And we're used to the idea of hyper targeting and getting ads that really pertain to what it is we're doing. But now with AI, I believe there's this next level of targeting, for good or for bad. So it could be advertiser with perfectly good intentions trying to sell something, but obviously could be nefarious as well. But that level of hyper targeting, I see as this sort of like this next frontier. So, we build a suite of ads, we push them out, they all look alike. But now we can actually, with AI, we can generate really compelling content almost in real time and target individuals. But are you seeing that yet from where you sit in the advertising world? And how do you feel like this might impact, the next iteration and the next generation of digital marketing, for good or for bad?
Well, I think that AI, like any technology, serves both good and bad. It really depends on the people who are using it. The other thing you can say about AI is that it will, and probably already is, making everybody, including marketers, much more productive, so that you can produce thousands of pieces of targeted advertising copy with, a single prompt, and modifications that you could never do in human time. So that is a game changer, I think, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I could say that is going to be a force for good or for ill. It really depends on how it's used. The other thing I would say is that AI is already upon you when it comes to targeting, and the generative AI that we've seen, in which which is based on large language models and has captured the world by storm because it's so impressive, the output. But more focused kinds of AI are already at work in the ad tech market and in targeting. That will only get better as the compute gets better and as the models get better. I think that as recipients of advertising, you're just going to be flooded with a lot more cleverly targeted advertising, and that you as marketers will need to use just a lot more wisdom about how to deploy this tool.
It's definitely Eric. An interesting time.
It is certainly that, yes.
It really
Thanks,
is.
Lisa.
And well, it's good to see you, Pete. And thanks to Pete, by the way, because we broadcast our last show at the Voice and AI conference, and it was so much fun. We had, I think, 200 people that were watching and participating in that.
Oh, that's great. Can I share something, Lisa?
Yes, quickly.
I have to, just real quickly. The Voice and AI conference is going to be rebranded to a conference called Generate. And it's going to be the Enterprise AI Summit called Generate. And Voice and AI will be a track at that conference next year. So we're really excited. We'll be lifting the lid soon, but I wanted to just drop that little bomb on this show.
That's all right. Pete is one of the consummate marketers in my community. I just love how you did such a nice plug there. It was shameless, but also mindful. I love it. So thank you, Pete, for being here today.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Pete.
I'm going to zoom out a little bit on this as well and follow up on your answer because, Eric, one of the questions every market leader needs to ask before they get into conversations around hyper-targeting or how many ads can how many, based on my prompt engineering skills and prowess, how many ads can I generate today for us to throw out into the social sphere? I want a market leader or a CMO to ask one question. Do I want to write stories that people will click on, or do I want to write a story that people would pay to read? And I invite every marketing leader watching this to really think about that, because you've got your content budget for the year, whether that content is delivered at a trade show or a major, a CIO event or in your newsletter or your podcast, however that content is repurposed. Look at the blend of content that you're creating and make sure that it isn't 100% in either direction. Create some diversity. Otherwise, all you're going to get is a bunch of hyper-targeted ads spitting out that are clickbait. And I know everyone watching this, your brand is so much more than that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, that's pretty good advice, Lisa, even for editors, is that, and a lot has to do with the way success is measured. If you're driven by an advertising model and your revenue is entirely dependent on how many clicks you can get, you are going to face a lot of pressure to write stories that are not very satisfying and not very journalistically important, but that capture that attention, capture those eyeballs that you can then resell. So for a journalistic organization, a media company, that mix of subscription revenue from people who just like what your organization stands for and advertising dollars is probably the way to go. Plus, you need to diversify into things like events and other kinds of ancillary models that is just kind of the nature of a 21st century media enterprise.
It really is. Yeah, I love the term media enterprise. It really is. Tell us what you do on a daily basis to build your truth discernment muscles, Eric.
I run my news feed, so my personal news feed, through a couple of filters that I polished over my years as an editor. So I look at news that is coming across my desk, across my screen, on a couple of axes. One is the reputation of the source that is delivering it. Do I have confidence that that source follows the standards of high quality journalism? Does it reveal its sources? Does it talk about the evidence behind the conclusions that it draws? Another really quick test you can use when things cross your desk or come across your screen or pop up on your phone is this question. Does this claim in this headline seem to be designed to trigger an emotional response in me? Does it make me angry? Does it shock me? Does it seem novel? Or does it conform in some kind of magical way to a favorite narrative of mine that say, you can't trust certain kinds of people. And this story seems to provide evidence of that. Those are things that suggest that the story may not be reliable, that it was fed to you by an algorithm rather than by a source that has your best interests in mind. And when you get that kind of thing, don't share it automatically. Stop and think. Set it aside for a day. Don't instantly react. The social media is set up for instant emotional transactions that, for the most part, only deepen the polarization that is now besetting our culture. Another kind of obvious test is likelihood. So how likely is it that this claim is actually true? Does it conform with my observations of the world? You'd be surprised at how willing people are to suspend disbelief when something pops up on their screen. It's just, and sharing things that on second thought or third thought, they would realize they just don't seem to make much sense. And finally, what is the intent of the person sharing this particular story? Are they a partisan of some kind? Do they have a financial interest, which is something we discussed earlier on about why someone might highlight another company for a ranking or something like that? And, this is not necessary to, make up nefarious intent, but if it's obvious what the game is, then, or it's not clear what the game is, then again, caution is called for.
That is some great advice that we will capture for our mindful moments. And it's really does this claim seem designed to create an emotional response? How likely is it that it is aligned with my view of the world? Is that the correct question?
I would say, how likely is it that it is true, that it really happened, that it accurately describes the event that it claims to describe, or the personalities that it claims to characterize?
And I love the third one. Pause before you share it.
Yes.
Yes. And I love that idea. It's so easy to, hey, I'm guilty as charged. I get dopamine hits from scrolling my feed on LinkedIn, from scrolling my feed on Facebook. And I do enjoy that. I know exactly what's going on. However, I'm trying to pause a lot more. Say, do I need to share this? Maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe not.
Yeah, good for you, Lisa. There are, the stuff that pops up that is served to you algorithmically is kind of the first encounter with artificial intelligence that we have. There are many smart people, many brilliant programmers who've designed these algorithms basically to be kind of irresistible and to figure out that path to your dopamine. And it is very hard to resist. It's kind of the verbal and knowledge equivalent of, salted cashews. Just hard to stop eating. And you need to kind of overcome that system one instinctive reaction, which is I'm outraged, or I'm shocked, or I've got to share this because it's shocking or outrageous, or because another, very powerful motivation is because it will make me look good to the people in my tribe. And, that is also a really, really powerful effect at play in our society, of why we've devolved into these kind of warring factions on the left and the right. But, those images that we have of the other side are often exaggerated by social media. They don't really reflect the way most people think. They probably don't reflect the way you think. And there's a kind of courage, a kind of wisdom, to go back to a word that you and Chip Conley put at the top of the pyramid, to resist falling into that trap and to use judgment where tribal loyalty would indicate, an instinctive, quick response.
Yes. Take a pause. There's a lot of wisdom in taking a pause. So, Eric, we've run out of time to take all the questions. I want Pete from Arlington and Marie Madeleine from Florida to know that we see your questions. We appreciate all of them. There's still a few others. And after the show, we will go in to LinkedIn and make sure that we share some additional perspectives. So keep those questions coming and scrolling, because the show remains evergreen, not only on the Mindful Marketer podcast platforms, but also on LinkedIn. So, Eric, before you leave, any big plans to go flying this weekend and
Lisa,
handle the truth of your pre-flight checklist?
I hope the other people on this LinkedIn Live know that you're a pilot as well. And just let me say that last weekend, I took some friends up to the Berkshires for a foliage tour from 5,000 feet. It was gorgeous. The sky was clear of clouds, the air was smooth, and it was just the kind of trip that you became a pilot to be able to take.
Yes. I attribute my first marriage to all the flights we used to do around the Statue of Liberty and Berkshires and New York. And my friends, I have stories about beautiful places in the East Coast, but we will not have time to cover them all today. I'll save those for the next 80 shows that we do. Eric, I'm so glad you're my friend and that we met through 100 Coaches and Chip Conley through the Modern Elder Academy. You are a treasure and a wisdom keeper for the pursuit of truth, and we need you out there. Let us know. We can follow you at ericschurenberg.com. Is that correct?
That's right.
I love your podcast. Yours are about value, not volume, which I greatly appreciate. And I encourage everyone to go listen to your shows as you carry the torch for truth. So come back and see us.
Lisa, the podcast is called In Reality. You can find it at inreality.fm. So thank you for that plug.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. You know what they say, if you don't toot your own horn, there is no music. So
spoken like
thank
a marketer.
Thank you all for being here today. You are all mindful marketers. I hereby pass you all the truth torch today. Follow these mindful ideas and action steps that Eric so brilliantly outlined today. Ask yourself, does this ad, does this post seem designed to create a big emotional response? How likely is it that what they're reporting really happened? And before you share something, please pause before you do it. And I think that's especially true if you come across analyst firms or so-called consultants who are touting certain products and services from their advertisers. So make sure you know the difference. That is important. So guess what, folks? I am going to be overseas in November. So my next live stream is going to be random. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to be in November sometime, either from London or Reykjavik, Iceland. So not sure. Stay on your toes. Make sure you go to themindfulmarketer.com and sign up to join our Know Ahead list. We publish our shows in advance. And also make sure you follow Eric Schurenberg, and we will put all of these links in the show notes. We also welcome your 5-star reviews on Apple if you feel so inclined. So we will definitely see you, though, back here in my Virginia studio on Friday, December 1st, where we welcome the one and only best-selling author, Sally Helgeson, who's going to be talking to us about how we as marketing leaders can rise together in community. So make sure you follow me. We'll send out the invite. And as we approach the beautiful fall season, get outside, enjoy the leaves, rake some leaves, roll in the leaves with your friends and loved ones. And thank you all for making the time to be with us today to carry the torch for truth. See you next month.